Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, August the 5th, 2026, and today we are live to chat about August, fall, winter, next year, this year, whatever you all want. So let's do it. All right, as I said, as you all trickle in, make sure to get your questions over there into the chat to Farmer Mike. He's hanging out, helping us out as always. Super appreciative of Mike. He's the best. How are you all doing? Let us know where you're at, where you're, unless you don't like prepositions at the end of your sentences, then let us know at where you are. Also, let's see. Yeah, I hope everybody's having a good week so far. It's what, Wednesday? Yeah, that's good. Midweek. Watched a little FC Cincinnati last night. That was fun. And yeah, they, it's that time of year when we're getting a little bit of Leagues Cup action. Very fun. And let's see, like for us right now, August is like a crazy month, but yesterday was like, we had one of those weird days where it was like we got a huge order for lettuce and we couldn't really, it always kind of happens in July and August where we get, bigger bulk orders of lettuce, but it felt like everybody's been wanting lettuce lately. And then one of our one of our clients told us that it was the Cyclospora outbreak that is causing everybody to really want to, get local lettuces and stuff, which is great in a way, but also like, Cyclospora could have let us know like a few months ago that this was going to happen so that we, would have a little bit of a time to get some lettuce in the ground because good night, we could sell hundreds of pounds right now. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And you never know, like all of a sudden markets can just shift and you're like, well, it's not a bad thing, right? To not have it. As you all trickle in, thank you again for coming and joining me. Make sure to get your questions in to Farmer Mike in the chat. Say hi to Mike to let him know how you're doing. Also, let him know like how your season's going so he can let me know and I can talk about that a little bit. I do have to knock out an ad read real quick as folks trickle in. This one from Holden Tool Company. Holden Tool Company is a family-run business specializing in high-quality hand tools and small batch manufacturing for growers of all kinds. They offer forged hoes, forks, scythes, sickles, pruning tools, orchard tools, and forestry tools featuring traditional European designs that are hard to find at ordinary garden centers. These tools are practical, durable, and made for people who typically do work by hand. Holden Tool Company provides thoughtful customer service, helping you choose the right tool for your body, crop, or task. Find them online at farmandgardentools.com and use that code NTG26 at checkout. That's helpful to us and to them to know, their advertising dollars are going to the right places, which they are because, you all are the best. All right. So I see Mike is sending me over a handful of questions. Make sure to get your questions into the chat to Farmer Mike. And also, if you do a super chat, obviously that helps what we do, but it also will, float to the top of the questions because oftentimes we end up at the end of these with more questions that we can get to, which is a great problem to have. But I like to get to as many as I can, but I will definitely get to those questions from the super chats. So anyway, let's kick one off here. What do we got? Fruit Pruning Channel asks, I planted shallots in the spring, probably later than I should have. They don't seem to be bulbing up. I learned later that you can plant them in the fall. Does that work in zone 4? Gosh, so shallots are a pretty long season onion, allium. One of my favorite things to grow, love shallots. I've grown shallots every year for, 5, 6, 7 years. It's been a while. I didn't think we could grow them this far south where we are just based on their day length requirements, but where we are is like right on the edge. So we do well with the Matador. However, when we do shallots, we start them in, let's say, January. Like January, February. And I think I did a video about like how we started our onions this year, but start them January, February, and we're in zone 6B, so we're a little bit warmer than you all at 4. What did you say? Zone 4, yeah. And then, we started them in January and then grow them pretty protected in the tunnel until March. And then we plant them in March. We try and get them as big as we can before we plant them in March, harvest them in July, and then cure them for like 2 weeks, and that usually works. Planting them over the winter, there are some onion opportunities for that. One of the things that you run into when you plant onions over the winter is if they go through too much hot cold, and I forget exactly what the days and all that stuff is, but they are a biennial, so they'll be like, oh well, we've been through a growing season in the winter, and then they'll flower, which is not great. So you do have to worry about that. You do have to worry about them getting hit a little bit too hard. So for me, I mean, you could try it. I can't say 100% it won't work. But in general, like those are like, for us, we could grow Walla Wallas that way, but something like shallots, I probably wouldn't do it. The seed is just too expensive to kind of risk it. So for me, I'd rather just know 100% that I'm going to get those. But if you have enough seed and it's not a problem, you could try it. I can't say for sure it won't work. I just would lean more towards it probably being not as effective, not as reliable. Anyway, but good question. I love me some shallots. It's got to be one of the best flavors. It's just a fresh shallot. I realize every year how much I like raw onions more than I realized, because a lot of the raw onions you get, like, I don't know, I had an aversion to like raw red onions for a long time, but you get these giant chunks of red onions in salads and stuff, and you're like, why? Nobody wants this. Everybody wants a thin sliver, super fine. That is something special. Red onion, shallot, candy onion, whatever. That's the best. Anyway, good question. At Johnny Mark writes, question, any pro/cons to keeping beds covered with a silage tarp all winter in Northeast Ohio? I won't have time to sow cover crops. Okay, so on the pros side, you pull it off and you plant in the spring. You'll probably have to amend a little bit. On the negative side, when you're in Northeast, you said Northeast Ohio, so you're probably pretty frozen ground, pretty cold for a lot of that time period. So the activity under there is not going to be, crazy. I would think, if you were going to do that, so that's the pro side. The con side would be that you will lose a little bit of soil organic matter. Potentially, you're keeping a giant plastic tarp down, so you'd have to deal with that if it blows around, or you'd have to, you are probably adding some amount of microplastic to the soil. There are times when I keep a silage tarp, or areas where I keep a silage tarp, from like, let's say November until the spring, where I will pull it off and then be able to plant in March, like for something like onions or shallots. And then that's super helpful on the pro side, because you just have beds ready and you don't have to do much to them except for maybe just slightly amend them. It won't always get rid of certain weeds. I mean, if you're expecting it to occultate some of the summer stuff, it won't really work over the winter. That summer stuff will come back just fine in the spring because it's prepared to be in cold weather. And survive until the temperatures get right for it to germinate. So there's that. It could add a little bit of compaction, so that's a con. Like if it has a lot of snow on it, just having all that snow on a tarp, right? Where instead of like you get to spread out that weight a little bit when it's just on the ground, but having all that snow on a tarp or ice or something, that could weight it down and cause a little bit of compaction. So you may have to deal with that in the spring. If you were going to do that, I would think you'd want to add maybe some amount of like, organic matter right over top before you put it on there. So at least the soil is kind of, you're getting stuff added to the soil. In the past, I've put leaves down and even wood chips, in our pathways or whatever, and then put the tarp over top. So that way they kind of break down and they kind of feed the soil over the winter. And the leaves won't, like in my experience, unless you keep it wet, they won't really fully break down, but there will be a nice layer underneath of them. So there's that, that's a positive. Otherwise I think like it is a thing, it is a practice people do. And I know a lot of growers who will just lock especially in colder climates, they'll just lock their beds in place over the winter. They're not going to bother with the cover crop, because as you get further north, those cover crops aren't going to be ready until later and later. So for us, we're in a good spot for cover crops, because we can be done with the cover crop. Like it can be fully senesced by mid-May. Whereas the further north you get, the slower that period is. So like a lot of times if you're getting to the point when your cover crop's not done until the end of June or early July, it's like, well, what's the point of that? Because then you could only plant, your fall sort of fall crops into that, which could be good, right? If you have the space, but if you don't have the space, that's a problem. So yeah, I know a lot of northern growers who do some version of that, either with landscape fabric or silage tarp. Right. Yeah. Good question. Stephen Rowe writes, winter has finally arrived in Southeast Australia. Plenty of frosts happening now. Yeah, you're probably like coming out of winter a little bit, but you're probably like in it, right? Which sounds nice in a way. Things are wild here, and it's always funny when we're in the middle, like we're around Christmas, and we're looking at you all harvesting tomatoes and beans and stuff. But yeah, yeah. Well, good luck with that. I feel like that's it's got to be fun for you all to be able to watch us work and not have to sweat so much. But yeah, I know that also. I don't know. Australia gets hit hard, I think, in these El Niños. So I don't know about necessarily Southeast Australia, but I know that a lot of Australia gets hit pretty hard in these El Niños, and with the one we've got coming up, or that we're kind of in right now through 27. We'll hopefully things will be manageable down there, and it's gonna be everywhere. So we'll see. But yeah, good luck at Delights of the Earth. Sorry, it was split up funny. Writes, Wisconsin Zone 5 doing all right. Our tomatoes aren't doing as well as the last 2 years. We would normally have buckets by now, but only have a few. What gives? A lot of things can affect that, right? Like it could be your soil. It could be the climate. I don't know if you got all that smoke, but that slows stuff down, right? You cut the sunlight out a little bit, and that will slow things down. Moisture levels, it could be, soil fertility is a big part of that too, as you garden for a long period of time. If you're not fully replenishing that with cover crops and compost and that sort of stuff, then it won't always rebound in the same way. A lot of times, depending on how long you've been there, like a lot of times your first 2 years on a farm, like on a new plot of land, are awesome. You're like, I'm amazing. This is the best. I'm a great grower. And then it sort of tapers off, and you kind of have to get into the soil health stuff a little bit more. So it could be that. It could be the variety. If you change the varieties up a little bit, could have been that you just are having either too hot or too cold of a year. Probably, I would guess. I think Wisconsin, you all got hit with some of these heat domes, which can hurt your pollination and stuff on the tomatoes. So that could be part of it. A lot of different things affect yield. Just generally, as long as you're providing all the things they need over time, they should provide roughly the same yield, even if it's not exactly at the same time. So that's, soil fertility, good water, light, all those things. But yeah, if you went through all that smoke for like whatever it was, a week or two, that could slow them down by a fair amount. That is a thing. But yeah, good luck. I hope that improves. At AZ Highland Homestead asks, question, your favorite cover crop for our high tunnel drainage soils in the arid Southwest for our sheep pastures here at 5,000 feet ASL in Arizona. Okay, so you're in Arizona, you have high drainage, so soils that drain really well. I'm assuming maybe sand or something, in the arid Southwest. For sheep pastures, not high tunnel, high drainage. Got it. Okay, so the biggest one that comes to mind is, there's a few that are good for sort of drought resistance, like what is it? It's not Sesbania, sun hemp. Sun hemp is a really good one for drought tolerance, right? In those situations. So maybe something like that. I also find that, and you said for sheep, I also find that like the beet chard family does pretty well in drought environment and like drier environments. And then you may also just have to I would probably just talk to somebody locally about maybe some legumes or forbs that make sense in that area. I know there are some like deeper rooted clovers and stuff that could work. Is it yellow clover that works in that environment? I don't know, because I've never grown in that environment, so I don't know. But yeah, those are the things that I go to. Any sort of, you need a legume in there if you can get one, and then there are some more drought tolerant legumes, and then something like sun hemp is a good one as well. But yeah, those are the ones that sort of come to mind. Best of luck out there in the high altitude Arizona. That's fun. I love Arizona. It's a very pretty state. 1 second here, Shano. All right, Shano writes, Oh, and make sure everyone, as you're coming in, to get your questions in to Mike, and I will get to as many as I can here today. And if you want to get them moved up, get the super chat going, and that will do it. All right. So at Shano writes, I have a 3 foot by 4 foot raised bed that was too shady to grow onions. They're slightly larger than marbles, and I have about 40 to 50 days until a first frost here in 6A, Massachusetts. It looks like MA. What do you think I should plant? 40 to 50 days until a first frost. Following onions, I mean, you could do so many things. You could do, something like, depending on how long you want it to go into the season, because you could do something like lettuce, right? Because that'll handle a fair amount of shade. You could do spinach probably soon, at least maybe not right away, but you could do spinach pretty soon. And assuming the shade is not an evergreen, like if it's something like a deciduous tree that's going to lose its leaves sometime in the fall, then you could change it up a little bit and like in the fall, you could have something go a little bit longer in the season, like kale or, some of those won't do as well without the shade, but if you grow pretty good starts first and then plant those, they'll do a little bit better once the, once the light improves there in the fall. And, yeah, I mean, those are the ones that come to mind. It's just those like shallow rooted, sort of faster growing crops that don't necessarily, they get a little bit longer and like maybe more tender with shade, but don't necessarily, like something like carrots you wouldn't want to do. Not only are they a little bit too slow for that, probably, but shade often you end up with really tall greens and really small roots. So you don't want a lot of shade for those. And beets, probably the same thing. You'd get really small beets out of that, I would think. You could maybe get away with chard. You get nice tender chard if you like something like that. But yeah, that's where my brain goes. There's maybe a couple others that will pop up as I think about it. But yeah, let's see. A Lamb's Quarters Farm writes, question, first year growing popcorn, the 997 is looking robust. Have you seen less pest raccoon pressure with popcorn versus sweet corn? Yeah, in general, the pests don't bother the popcorn quite as much. I wouldn't say that I've like tested it. I get a little bit of raccoon damage in the popcorns, or in the popcorn sometimes. I would say more often than not, though, the sweet corn is where they're concentrated in, that or the watermelons. But yeah, I think it's just that level of sweetness that you get from the sweet corn. That's what they're after, even if for a time your popcorn is pretty sweet when it's still green. It's not quite the same thing. Like they'll eat it. Deer will sometimes eat it, but it's never like they don't ravage it like they do a sweet corn patch. But yeah, raccoons will absolutely demolish a sweet corn patch. I've seen them do it a number of times. It's not my favorite thing, but yeah, definitely can happen. And in the past, we've done things like, we have like just a little electric netting, like what we use for our sheep. Would that worked pretty well? Or you could use like, we've live trapped them before and moved them, which is not my favorite because I'm always afraid I'm like taking a mom away from her baby. So I don't do that a lot, or I haven't done it anymore because we have that. Like I said, we have that netting. That usually works around sweet corn, but if you're just growing the popcorn and you're like worried about that, maybe think about one of those nettings. In general, I don't think it'll be a problem. And if it is going to be a problem, you'll know pretty fast. Like they'll come out, they'll taste it, and then you'll see like a couple of ears down, and then overnight you'll see like all the ears down. They're smart like that. They come in, they wait for it to hit the peak ripeness, and then they just hammer it. Genius. As you all trickle in, of course, make sure to keep putting your questions in to Farmer Mike there in the chat, and he will get them to me. At Crowbar asks, could you discuss field or drain tile pros and cons? I have some property that is wet during spring and periods of heavy rain, so it delays planting or crops spend some time underwater. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could necessarily say one way or another. It kind of depends on where you are and where it would drain out to. But in general, I prefer not to do that. I prefer to plant in areas that aren't draining, because moving water that way is not ideal for your soil, because there are going to be times in the middle of the summer when you're going to be like, now I want that water back. And there are ways to drain and, use some sort of drain tile or whatever French drains or whatever to get it into a pond that you can then regurgitate. That's not the word. Reuse that water. So on the con side, yeah, that's the biggest con, is that like in the middle of the summer, you're going to probably not want that drainage, but in the spring, obviously you do want a way to move that water. If there are ways of doing it that are less, I don't know. It could be something like raising those beds up a little bit more. You said they sit in drainage though, or in standing water sometimes, that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you can raise the beds or you can not plant those areas in the spring, you can build that soil organic matter. That'll help a lot. You can kind of channel it away a little bit. I've tried everything on this farm. I say this a lot, but this farm is like one of the hardest places I've ever grown. Like if Anna and I are ever done here, I'm not going to be like, you should buy this farm and farm here. I should be like, somebody should just buy a horse and put it on this farm, because that's probably what it's best for. But the drainage is so intense that you'd really have to do some water movement, but also like it just doesn't want to be vegetables. So what we found that works the best though is improving our soil organic matter, not planting the wetter spots at the wetter times of year. So oftentimes I'm cover cropping those, letting them get through the wetter times, and then I'm killing that cover crop and using that all summer. And then the other thing is, if you can move a little of the water away with channeling here or there, that helps. And yeah, but I think the raised bed to me has been the most effective thing. But yeah, in general, it's tough. It's like a hard balance there to strike. I know a lot of big growers who do drain tile, and it's just not my favorite thing. It's a bunch of plastic in the soil that it's going to be there forever. And it's just, I don't know. It's not my favorite thing. It wants to be wet. And so, especially with things like wetlands, where a lot of times like that's the cheapest land you can get is like either a rocky hilltop or wetlands, that can sequester a lot of carbon and has a lot of good benefits. It'd be better if you could grow at a slightly different spot and then let that be wetlands, because then it's going to provide you a lot of ecological benefits. That's the stuff that excites me, and less so like fighting the soil and trying to force it to be one thing, instead like asking the soil what it wants to be and trying to accommodate a little bit more. And I know that can be hard because sometimes that's like all you have to grow on, but maybe there's an option there. Maybe there's an idea in there somewhere. Real quick, I do have to knock out one last ad read. This one from Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of the grant deadlines. That's super helpful. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. All right, let's get back to our questions. XCXL, right? That makes sense. It looks like Excel. Writes, what did you think of the World Cup final? The 2022 World Cup final was like one of the best games of all time. The 2026 World Cup final was, it was a little boring. It kind of ended how I expected. I thought the ending was fun. I thought the rest of it was pretty boring. But yeah, it's so like Messi's just incredible. It's just there's just his way. He like willed his entire team to the final, and then almost in those last 10 minutes made it something interesting. Got them into extra time. Like it was cool. Like it's hard to explain. This is like, how people talk about like the Michael Jordan era and how cool that was and like how much fun that was. Like we, at least for the last, 10, 12 years, we've got to witness that in soccer, which is the Messi era. It is incredible. It's just like one of the wildest things to watch. So yeah, in a way it was fun. I loved watching it. I love the World Cup. It definitely, probably the reason I don't have enough lettuce right now is the World Cup. But, it slowed me down, got me a little distracted there for a minute. But definitely, it's the most fun. I love soccer. It's just, it's a wonderful sport, and it is unfortunately very distracting sometimes, but World Cup is the best. Luckily, I have 4 more years to prepare for the next one. Anyway, but good question. I love that stuff. At D Mall asks, my town was hit by a tornado last week. Goodness. Luckily, we were just outside the worst of the destruction. My garden was mostly okay. Wondering if there are any ideas of what to plant in the new empty spots. 5A. Oh my goodness. I don't know that I have a lot of advice for like what to do with your garden after a tornado. I think like that is I can only imagine. like Tornado Alley has sort of shifted into Kentucky, so we're getting a lot more of that, and I have a lot more friends who've been affected by tornadoes. A few on a farm, like Jackson, who helped me start this, he was hit by a tornado. Their farm was like some of their infrastructure was smashed by a tornado. Really, I mean, awful stuff. Like any sort of lightweight high tunnel, any sort of high tunnel, just absolutely destroyed. And then thrown into the trees, and it's a mess. So it's like not only hard to clean up and pick up and stuff, but then you've lost all of that stuff. I mean, on the one hand, like I can talk about like what to do with, like you have maybe it ripped out a bunch of stuff. And you could do any number of things there, right? You said you were in, doesn't say where you are, but 5A. Yeah, I mean, you've still got plenty of time to plant stuff. The other side of that is though making sure to go help your community, because you never know how that's going to pay off down the line. Like I just think there's such an important factor in being a part of your community, especially when it's like when it gets down and it gets hit, is being there for them, and you never know how that's going to come back and be there, and how they're going to come back and be there for you when you need it. But yeah, I mean, those are, I just can't imagine. So wishing you all the best. That's a brutal stuff. And just on the more technical side in 5A, you do have plenty of time to still get some stuff in, your spinaches and lettuces and kales and all the fall goodies. Maybe a little late for something like carrots, but maybe you could swing a round of Mokum in there. You could try it, depending on the rest of the season. But man, yeah, wishing you all the best there. That is brutal. All right. Yeah, keep getting your questions in too, to Farmer Mike there in the chat. Say hi to Mike, let him know how you're doing, and give him a thanks for all the work he does. All right. Excuse me, getting a drink of water here. At Fruit Pruning Channel asks, my potatoes froze twice in spring. They look healthy, but are starting to bloom. I dug around and found very few small potatoes. Would it help to cut blooms so more energy goes down for tuber production? I don't think so. I've never heard that. I guess I've never researched it either. I don't think so. I mean, potatoes just sometimes flower. If it were me, I'd probably just let them keep going, maybe hill them up a little bit, if you can, and then just keep them watered and happy, and they should be good to go. Like you may just end up with smaller potatoes. That's kind of what happened to us this year. They got hammered. As some the longtime listeners will remember, they got hammered pretty bad, like whatever that was, April, I think. We had a hard frost. And it set them back quite a lot. And then we ended up with some potato beetles that I managed to take care of pretty well. And then, but yeah, the potatoes were kind of small. Like they were okay. They were good, and they're still holding well in storage, but wasn't ideal. But yeah, no, you could try it. I don't know. Honestly, that's worth looking into though. I've never looked at the research on that. At Knight's Nursery asks, any tips on propagating perennials in no-till beds to increase yields for the market/personal use? I mean, a lot of perennials end up in no-till situations, right? Because you're not digging them up or anything like that. It just depends. The biggest thing with that, with establishing any sort of perennial bed, is really, really take your time to make sure that the soil is in a good place, that you've dealt with the weeds, that you've mulched if you're going to mulch, and then it's all taken care of. Like, what was that? Osawaga Farm. I think we did a video with them a couple years ago, and they were talking about how they have this like hedgerow area, a couple of them maybe, and they had those things tarped for like a full year, and then they established all the mulch and all that stuff, and then they got all their plants in, and it just looks nice. It's really well kept now because they've just dealt with all the weeds. So yeah, I mean, I would do all that stuff, get the soil prepped, broad fork it, like get the compaction dealt with, get all that stuff down, and maybe like consider tarping it for a year before getting those in there if you don't want to deal with all the weeds and stuff that come along with perennials, right? Because they're just staying there. You're not working the soil all the time. You're not cultivating it all the time. Yeah, I mean, those are the things that come to mind for me. In Zone 8B, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge there just because you're so much warmer. But yeah. At Glenn Bronner asks, Jesse, I want to thank you again for answering my question about Golden Nugget sweet potatoes on a live earlier this year. Well, you're welcome. Bug Tussle Farm really came through. Great. Thank you for your time, Glenn. Yeah, you're welcome, Glenn. That's very fun. That's my old, that's like my mentor, Bug Tussle Farm, Eric and Cher. They're the best. And that sweet potato is also the best. It is the sweetest sweet potato known to man. So, yeah, good stuff. I'm glad that they were able to come through. I feel like they should just make a business out of that, or somebody should, because, as much as I talk about the Golden Nugget sweet potato, isn't for everybody. It's really good, like in our region, probably further south than here. But you can only go so far north with these things because it is like a 120-day crop. But yeah, delicious stuff, and definitely a winner in my book. Make sure also, just for anybody that's coming in and coming out, to like this. I always forget to say that. Make sure to hit the like button if you could, and also get your questions into Farmer Mike there. At Symbioquine asks, thanks for making all this important information more accessible, Farmer Jesse. You're welcome. Whole team that does it. Yeah, it's very important to us. Thoughts on Fukuoka-style seed pellets for gradual conversion of sod, old cow field, via broadcasting of pelleted broadleaf seed under heavy vole/bird pressure. Okay, so like the whole thing with the Fukuoka-style seed ball idea is that you take seeds and you basically like wrap them in clay balls and you throw them, you broadcast them around. The clay helps hold the moisture, it helps them germinate, and so like crows and stuff can't dig them up. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think it's kind of cool. And obviously I love Fukuoka, his stuff. I just love Fukuoka because just this idea of him being like, why does the dog get to lay there all day long and I like have to toil? And I just love that, of just being like, there's got to be a better way to do this stuff. So I don't know in terms of like, there's only, obviously it's not built for capitalist production society, right? But establishing like a field of like maybe for our Arizona farmer up there or something like that. If you could do it efficiently, like if you could mix a bunch of clay and, I don't know, press it into blocks or something and broadcast those efficiently, then I think it would be, I think it is a possibility for managing like to establish grass or whatever it may be. There's probably easier ways too. Like a lot of, like when you're doing this for landscaping, they have a blank slate, something that's either been tarped or it's been tilled or whatever. And then they broadcast the seeds and then they just sort of like, put some peat moss or something over top of that and then water it really well. Like that works too. So it's probably a little bit easier. But I don't know. I mean, if you could, but a lot of times from my recollection, and honestly, I'm sure people have improved on these processes or whatever, but like, they just took like seeds and clay and then like hand rolled them all together in balls. It just feels like that would take a long time. I think it's a cool idea. Like I said, I love Fukuoka. I love that thinking. I think we need to think more like that. Like we just overwork. Like I always think about the milpa patch that we have out here. It's the least amount of work that I have to do, and it is loaded with food. It's just like, popcorn and beans and the squash, and it's just like, I mean, that feels like the right approach, but harvesting all that is such a pain. It takes forever. And so you have to find some balance of like, how do you do this for production versus like, how do you do it without killing yourself? And, it shouldn't be that we have to work so incredibly hard to grow, food. It seems crazy. And it didn't used to be like that, but yeah, it is now. At Richard Gould gave us a little super chat. Thanks, Richard. No question. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so everybody say good morning and thank you to Richard. Appreciate that, Richard. You're the best. At Blue Raven there. At Siscan Fish asks, any advice for a central Oklahoma new market gardener? I think I'm going to have to invest heavily in organic matter. I mean... Let's see, central Oklahoma. I think, you probably will. Like you're probably dealing with clay? I mean, I know Oklahoma's got a lot, but I always think of Oklahoma as having that like red clay soil. But it could be sandy. It could be any number of things. I mean, it always starts with, and make sure reminder just to get your questions into the chat there over in the chat. Say hi to Mike. Make sure to get your questions in there. Sorry, got derailed here for a second. I mean, start with your soil test and just get an idea of how much soil organic matter you have there. Figure out where your nutrient balances are. You may have to get your soil organic matter up, but you may not. You may find like you have good drainage, you have no heavy compaction, even if you're hovering in that like 2 or 3% organic matter, like it may be fine for your situation. I think people think like, my organic matter has to be 8, 9, 12% or whatever. It really doesn't. It has to be, your soil has to be able to breathe. Your soil has to have the right moisture content. Like it does, and it has to have good microbial life. So sometimes it may be as easy as just like getting some compost mixed in there and then going with that. And that may be like more than enough. And you just do it the right way. Like we break down all the different ways to do break into a garden. But yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated, but I would start there. Just get a soil test, send it off to, you're in Oklahoma, you could probably send it down to Kinsey Ag. I think they're in Missouri. They're not too far from you. And and then just have them send you back like some, get a consultation basically, like they'll give you, this is what you need. And then, you can find all that, get it in your soil, and you should be good to go. And then also check your compaction, and then make sure you have a good water source, and that should pretty much take care of it. But yeah, that's all good stuff. And let me get another sip of water here. It's kind of weird to talk for like, I don't know, an hour straight. Like I often do this I do this once a month. And then at the end of it, I realized I just talked for like an hour straight with basically not stopping. It's always an interesting marathon, but I don't know. I kind of enjoy it. It's fun. All right. Best of luck, Siscanfish. At the Fruiting Channel asks, it's well known that you should replant the largest garlic bulbs, but what if the large bulbs have small cloves? Is it just as good to separate all of your seed garlic and plant the largest cloves? Yes, larger cloves are better for bigger bulbs. So like what we used to do is, you take the biggest bulb, and then from those, if we had enough seed garlic, and I say used to, this is still what we do, you take the biggest bulbs, and from those, you take the biggest cloves. And if you have a few small cloves in there, like you can have a seconds basket, because what'll sometimes happen is you'll plant all your largest and realize you miscounted, or you want an extra bed of garlic or whatever, and then you'll be like, well, I'll just use the seconds for that, and that's fine too. So usually what we have is like firsts, seconds, kitchen, and that would be like the other day I talked about the fusarium wilt on that person's, or that fusarium on that garlic. Was that yesterday or the day before? And anyway, if I had something like that, then those would be my kitchen garlic, and then maybe smaller cloves would be my seconds, and those would be either kitchen, or that would be what I'd plant for green garlic, or that would be what I'd fill in. And then, the larger cloves would be, so I don't base it so much on the bulbs. I separate the bulbs when I harvest, and then I separate the cloves when I'm popping. And that will start, I don't know, in about 2 months. Then we'll plant it around the beginning of October. And then, these last couple of years, I feel like I planted, like this year, I feel like I planted too early. I felt like the garlic got hit hard. And I want to say I planted like maybe right there at the beginning of October, or end of September, maybe even last year, which was, I don't know, sometimes I get whimsical and start doing these things. But usually that beginning to mid-October is what I shoot for here in 6B. We'll start popping, and then, we start separating then. And it doesn't, like if you take like one small clove from a big bulb, like it probably still will make a decent bulb, but it won't make, won't be the best in the world. Won't be the biggest of what you grow probably. At Manor Gates Market Garden asks, currently using a kelp soak to prime my spinach seeds, a technique I learned from this podcast. As market gardeners, how can we best take advantage of bad national headlines versus clean local lettuce? If you were here in the beginning, I was talking about how our lettuce orders have been outrageous this week, and I didn't realize, I assumed it maybe that it was the Cyclospora thing, but it turns out that's what it is. Like they're just like our places that are our retailers that we sell to, or our retailer that we sell to. They were saying that that everybody's coming in looking for local lettuce right now, and they're selling just like crazy, which is great in a way. But we can't just suddenly quadruple our lettuce production, in August. It's the hardest time to grow, one. And then two, it takes 2 months to really get lettuce going. So it's one of those things. We could probably just plant a little bit, hopefully, for July and August, just because our lettuce orders tend to be really, really big anyway. But Cyclospora definitely accelerated that quite a bit. And the best way to quote unquote take advantage of it, I guess, is the just to have local lettuce. If you've got it, it turns out that people are interested. And also make sure to not rush it. Like, you've got to make sure that all of your food safety stuff is on point. If you know, and this would be a good time to be GAP certified. Make sure that you've got all of your, like, any sort of all of your sanitation SOPs and all that stuff down if you're a production farmer. And if you're just growing in your backyard, like, just, that shouldn't be a problem, but, make sure to still follow the best practices. Like, you don't want to make yourself sick or your friend sick if you give them lettuce. But you definitely don't want to make your customers sick. And then they wouldn't trust anybody growing lettuce. And that would be terrible for a long time. And I think this is kind of how the organic sort of system was set up, is that there's like a fear behind it, right? Like, they don't want one bad organic experience to spoil organic for everybody. So, like, a lot of the systems that you have to follow in organic certification are like sanitation based, and not necessarily like, are you using chemicals? Are you, using biologicals and that sort of stuff? They're way more concerned with, like, is there manure on the lettuce sort of stuff, and for good reason. But, like, in this case, obviously, like, cyclospora is a really bad thing, and it obviously makes a lot of people sick. So you want to avoid that, but you also want to avoid any potential E. coli or whatever. So, but yeah. I don't know. I kind of got off on a little tangent there, but yeah. Let's see. Good questions. And was there another thing in there? Oh, priming the spinach seed. That's fun. Yeah. Prime your spinach seed. Just try it out. Try half your spinach seed primed and half not. Soak it in something like a kelp soak, or I usually use like, just a little bit of compost extract, and I'll just soak it overnight, dry the seed, then plant it, and it germinates way faster and way better and more consistently. Like, we'll get nearly 100% spinach germination. Like, right now, I'm going to sow some this week, actually. So yeah, that'll be our first, like, fall spinach sowing. But yeah, that helps a lot. At Corvid's Ravencraft, I think I always say Ravenscroft, and it's Ravenscraft, says, speaking of Fukuoka, do you have any thoughts on crops for a greenhouse that are less intensively managed? I'm thinking ginger and turmeric, but open to other ideas. Yeah, ginger and turmeric are good ones, because they don't, you have to plant them early, and then you basically just have to keep them weed free for the whole season. They're not like tomatoes where you're pruning them every week and that sort of thing. I mean, you could put, like, if you really just kind of want stuff coming out of your greenhouse, you could look into like figs and that sort of thing. If you want just a single crop through the season, just take some longer season stuff, like, that doesn't take trellising and that sort of thing. So that would be like, I don't know, potatoes, sweet potatoes. You could do some winter squash in there. Like, if you're not doing it for production, yeah, I think that's, I think that the sky's kind of the limit. Ginger and turmeric are good ones, though. They're very pretty. I love the way they look. They're like, it's just like this big tropical plant, and it's so funny to see it in Kentucky. It just feels a little bit out of place, but like perfect for it in a weird way. Big fan. Love those crops. Excuse me. Let me get a drink of water here. How much time do I got? Oh, I got like 15 minutes. At Chris Stoltzfus asks, I have a question. Do you know anything about composting? I am starting a compost business. I need some tips. Yeah, we've done an enormous amount of compost content. Commercial compost is a whole thing. I would look to the Composter podcast. Our friend Jane Murner, I'll have her back on the show, I'm sure, at some point soon. We're going to get back into interviews and all that stuff before too long. And because right now I don't have a lot of time, but I will here shortly as the season winds down. Yeah, there's a bunch of books. There's like go to one of the composting council conferences. That could be a great way to meet people, learn all the sort of details. The one thing with composting is it is weird to get into in terms of like regulations, because you have, some of it is like waste management, and then sometimes it's like very streamlined through like waste management, and that's like how you get all, you can do all your regulations and all that stuff. You can meet it through waste management. Sometimes the waste management people send you over to like 3 different people, and nobody knows exactly like how to license you, because it's somewhat waste management, but it's also like you're dealing with all this manure and potential pollution problems, and like you have to go through the EPA and all this, like, so it can get really complicated. It depends a lot on where you are. Go back and watch some of our older videos with Jane. We've talked to like Arizona Worm Farm as well. I think we've talked to a couple others. They're just not coming to mind. But yeah, I mean, look at Jane's podcast. She's done a lot of that work, and she's the best. The Composter Podcast. Check that out. But yeah, good luck. We need more composters. There's also the Kentucky Composting Conference, which I think is coming up in October. I will be at that. Theoretically, I need to call my buddy who runs it. But yeah, I think that's in October. I don't have the date on the top of my head, but yeah, Kentucky Composting Conference. Come hang out with me and talk compost. Let's see. At Eric Fisher writes, what varieties can you recommend for overwintering carrots and spinach in hoop houses that are no heat? We have overwintered potatoes all winter with hay mulch protecting the ground from freezing. Yeah, I mean, really, some of those longer season carrots are probably the best ones. They're just going to hold the best. But you could do just about any carrot over winter. If you've had luck doing potatoes, like carrots will be fine. And then spinach, same thing. Those Savoy types, the ones that are crinkly, those tend to do a little bit better in the winter than your like space spinach what's the spinach? Any of those smooth spinaches. Yeah, the Savoy types, those are tasty too, but they tend to do a little bit better, with that freezing and thawing and all that good stuff. Then let's see. I don't have a specific variety. I mean, most varieties is probably the answer. They'll do fine as long as you plant them early enough, let them grow, get established, and then maybe with the spinach you'd want to protect it. But in a hoop house, for the most part, like I said, if your potatoes are doing all right, your spinach will do all right. Like our spinach, most years will do fine just like out in the field. Like it won't be in production over the winter, but like in the spring it'll bounce back and it's mostly fine. Just depends on if we get like super, super frozen or anything like that. And make sure I've got a few more minutes. So get a couple more questions in there if you want. And then I've got, I'll end here in about 12, 13 minutes. At JC Smith asks, manure. My coworkers pile manure and shavings, turn sometimes and age each pile. It would be nice to use for my beds, but I don't quite trust it. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is it's like, there are regulations, and I feel like I talk about this every live, is like the 90-120 day rule. So you do have to follow that. You can look it up. It's very simple. And I'm sure that other people can recite it at this point as many times as I've said it. So there's that. There's like the if you're going to use something that's not technically compost, hasn't been properly composted, that is the thing. But like if you have access to manure and somebody's like turning it and taking care of it and like, keeping it moist and all those things, and it looks and smells good, like that's a usable product for sure. And manure can make a great soil amendment when done right. And, maybe just like proper composting techniques will help to eradicate any issue with like the pathogens, right? That's the whole point of composting, is that it heats it up to a temperature that's going to kill almost every pathogen, right? Or all the pathogens, at least get them to a level that's sustainable. Whereas, that's like, there's like a danger zone that you don't want stuff to sort of incubate in. And then composting is usually in that like 120, 130 plus degree range, and that will kill most things. So yeah, if manure, like the ingredients aren't the problem, it's really the process and when it's been on the soil compared to when you plant or when you harvest, which is when that 90-120 day rule comes into play. But yeah, I mean, in general, manure is a great resource. Like that shouldn't scare you. What should, concern you is just like, how was it processed and how long it's been on your soil before you harvest whatever you're going to eat from it. Yeah, that's kind of it. You just don't want like raw manure on your vegetables. That probably goes without saying, but yeah, in general, that just keeps you safe and keeps anybody that's going to eat it safe. At Cornelius Hawk writes, cut down a large maple tree and trying to grow near tree where soil appears very depleted. Any special steps to help improve the area aside from the normal new bed prep? Honestly, sometimes when you cut down trees, you get this explosion of nitrogen. So you may not have any problems. I don't know if you've had any problems yet. If you cut it down and the roots are still there, that could be a problem. It depends on the maple, how well it'll grow back or if it'll send out like shoots. So those could be issues. In, improving the area is just like decompacting it and maybe getting, like doing the normal stuff, getting some compost mixed in there, decompacting the soil with either a broad fork for beds or doing, like a subsoil or whatever. If you have access to something like that, getting that compost kind of mixed in there deep. Those are the things that sort of come to mind for me. But sometimes, yeah, like I remember there's like an old Elliot Coleman. You could probably even just look it up. Like he has a picture. I don't even remember where I saw this, but like they cut down a forest and then they grew cabbages, and the cabbages were like, just like the next year, they didn't fertilize or anything. They just had like enormous cabbages. I remember that. I don't remember where I saw it, or maybe it was a talk I was at he gave or something. I forget. But I always think about that because we've had that same experience where we like cut down a piece of a forest or something, and then you just get this explosion of nitrogen the first year because all those roots are decaying and they're releasing all their, excess, all the nitrogen and all the carbon that they've sort of sequestered for how many ever years. So, let's see, I think I can probably knock out these last few. Let's see. At Ozifus, I'm going to say it that way. Advice for blister bugs in the tomato patch. You got blister beetles in your tomato patch. That's interesting. We usually get them on like spinach family. I don't know. Yeah, I've never seen them in tomatoes. Usually for us, it's just a matter of trying to keep them exclusion netting or something. We'd usually put some in sort of insect netting over, but if they're in your tomato patch, they can come in hordes too. So I don't know. That's going to be one that I'm going to have to pass on. So I don't know the answer to that because I've never seen them in tomatoes, and I wouldn't know. There's probably got to be a way of managing them. One thing I would probably do is get my tomatoes happy again, like get them maybe a nice little dose of nitrogen, some fish hydrolysate or something just to get them going. And I don't know, maybe there's some research on that's out there that is worth looking into. But yeah, that's not one I'd heard of. So yeah, bummer. I'm sorry about that. At Christian Menendez. Why aren't some of my tomatoes producing anything but blooms? It looks super healthy. Otherwise, no tomato. Sometimes that can be too much nitrogen. So it can be, they don't flower a ton, but sometimes like what'll happen is if the plant's like super healthy, it's super green, that maybe just means you put too much nitrogen of whatever form on there, maybe too much compost, too much fish hydrolysate, too much, chemical nitrogen, whatever you used. That could be one. It could also be, sometimes you'll get blooms if it's really hot and then they'll drop. So you're not actually getting the fruit. And so it just happens because after it's like 85, 86 degrees air temperature, for long enough, and they will drop their blooms. So that could be a factor. You may want to add some shade if you're doing this in a tunnel or something to cool them down. That's kind of hard to do in a field, but that could be a factor as well. You may just have to wait a little while longer until they cools down and they're able to produce. Then, those are the two biggest things. Then there could also be a nutrient thing, like you're maybe not enough potassium or something. Those are the three that come to mind. If any of that, hopefully something in there rang helpful to you. Then thank you. Good question. Best of luck on that. At Shano asks, question on the topic of compost. Static compost pile, 118 degrees Fahrenheit, been hot for 3 days. Time to flip. How many days of heat before I can let it mature? It's currently about 3 by 3 by 2 pile. That's in feet. If it's static, if it's a static aerated pile, then you don't have to flip it. If it's just sitting there and it doesn't have any air getting through it, then it depends. Like it depends on what you want here, because if you want it to qualify as compost, then you just have to follow the regulations, which is, I think it's 5 flips within 15 days, keeping those temperatures, and it has to be above 118. It has to be closer to 131. I think so. Is that right? It just came out of my brain. So I think that's right. Has to be over 131 for 15 days, flipped 3 times, and 5 times in a 15-day period, which is a big job. For a 3 by 3, 2 by 2 pile, it's probably more manageable. But yeah, that would technically qualify it as compost. Now, if you're not worried about it qualifying technically as compost, like you're not selling the produce that you plan on composting, using that compost for, then, flip it a couple times, try and keep it above that, like 131, because that's when you're going to start killing those pathogens. Like 118 is good, but it's not quite there, right? The sort of danger zone is below that 131. It's really below like 120. They're giving you a little bit of leeway there. But yeah, ideally you get it above 118. If it's not quite there, maybe you add a little bit more nitrogen, you add a little bit of water if it's too dry. not too much water, because if it gets too wet, then it will bring the temperature down. But a little bit of water, a little bit of nitrogen, and then that oxygen. Once you get that whipped in there, like that will that'll really heat things up. But yeah, I think we're gonna call it. I know my kids are out doing something outside, and I should probably check on them at some point because Hannah is off with deliveries. So what we will do is we will call it a day. I want to thank everybody for coming. Big thank you to Mike for doing what Mike does, which is everything, it feels like. So don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3. So your donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Mike will put all that in there. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is a super easy way to help us out as well. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all those things. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert again for the production help and editing, my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world, including delivering our lettuce, etc. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can usually hear, not today. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where usually, if it's not a live day, we will do shout outs. We will get back to that tomorrow, but thank you all so much for coming. You all are the best. Great questions today. Always fun. We will see you tomorrow. Not live, but, normal. Bye.